Welcome to Faith Over Breakfast, podcast number 27, where Kevin talks about his weird dreams. We talk about trauma therapy. It's really echoey because we recorded it in the Eatery of the village church. By the way, my name is Eric. I'm pastor of the village, and Andy Littleton is not here because he's feeding his goats. Enjoy the podcast. All right. Well, here we go. So the thing is, I like Andy because he does all the intros.
You want me to do the intro?
Yeah, you do it.
Good morning and, good afternoon possibly, or good night, and welcome to Faith Over Breakfast. It is a beautiful Thursday morning here in the desert, and I am not Andy Littleton. Andy Littleton is taking care of his goats right now, as best as I can tell.
Yeah.
And getting some time to relax. That's Pastor Eric Seepin of the Village Church, and this is Faith Over Breakfast. Sans Andy Littleton for just until next week.
That's right.
So I was graciously offered to come in and sit, and I think
you graciously offered, yes.
I did. I offered up my own help in this matter.
But just to say that Mark a day earlier had offered.
Oh, Mark Crawford?
Because he knew I was struggling to find a host or somebody to host with me. And you offered, and Mark's already been on the show, and you haven't, and it was the perfect.
Hey, sorry, Mark. I didn't mean to take your space and your place.
He didn't seem overexcited about it.
Okay. I seemed a little bit excited about it.
Yeah, because you got this whole program started.
Well, kind of.
No, I give you complete credit for this, for Talking Culture. No. Talking Culture is your show.
That was the show that those who don't know, and most of you probably don't, myself and Sam Burns did a radio show for 5 months, starting in November 2016. Actually, we started the day before Election Day, and it was a show promised to be non-political. I think we did
You did a really good job of being non-political.
And in order to fill time, we did it 5 days a week, 9 to 10 a.m. on KVOI, AM 1030. I had this idea of bringing on Andy and Eric and just talking about faith and culture and diversity and, what's going on in today through the lens of what it's like to run a church. We never actually did what I wanted to do.
And you never gave us any time, really. Let's just be honest.
Well,
we got pushed around. Our 10 minutes was always...
It was always truncated, and Sam and I would always go off on what we found to be far more interesting tangents, arguing with each other. But why I think that it didn't work is because that format is so constricting. Mm-hmm. And what I wanted to do about a month into that show, because it was like, when you are confined to 4 10-minute segments with built-in commercial breaks on the frequency of the amplified modulation AM radio, you're confined by a lot of things. It's the Bill Simmons report, or the BS report. Bill Simmons is a famous sports guy, and he was one of the first big podcasters. And his podcast called the BS Report would preface itself every time by saying the BS Report is a free-flowing conversation. And that was their way of saying, hey, we might talk about inappropriate things. But free-flowing and conversation are two things that on a radio show we didn't get. I was always worried about the commercial break and worried about, does my producer think this content's conservative enough, or am I offending anyone with this? And we have to get to our next guest. So the issues that are actually interesting and the things that I would love to talk about, we couldn't really do.
Right.
So we had fun, and
I got the radio bug from that.
The buzz or the bug?
The bug. But I could have gotten a buzz because we drink a lot of coffee beforehand.
Well, if you recall last week's podcast, you said you got the radio buzz, and you got the other buzz. Anyway.
Yeah.
I'm not poking at you.
No, you're always poking at me, Kevin. Let's be honest. That's who you are. It's part of your character.
So,
by the way, just as a sub thing, last week our whole family went back and watched Russ's wedding.
Really?
Because we were looking for
Russ and Emily Lewis were married in 2000.
Yeah,
at El Camino Baptist Church.
Yeah. And we were looking for you, and we couldn't find you in the audience because the camera didn't pan enough.
Oh, you didn't see me or David?
Mm-mm.
We were there.
Yeah, no, you were. I know. We were looking.
Can I talk about what she preached about?
Oh, sure. Go for it.
Well,
it was, by the way, I listened to the whole sermon. It was the worst wedding sermon ever.
It was your first, right?
It went on, and so much so that, like, I'm sitting on a stool eventually.
You sat down during your own speech. Wow. Well, it was your first wedding.
It was my first wedding, and probably I had been doing a lot of public speaking. I mean, that was in 1998.
It wasn't 98. It was 2000.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, still, I've been doing a lot of public speaking. It was a year before we planted the village, so.
Right.
But man, I had some impressive hair. Let me tell you.
It was, it kind of came out here, side to side.
Because I had stopped. I didn't wash it for a year. I just rinsed it down and let it mat out and dread. And so
is this kind
really,
of a John the Baptist kind of theology, whereas you don't wear or eat locusts, but
right. Well, to be honest with you, at the time, I felt like I needed some alternative look. And I wasn't going to get tattooed, and I wasn't getting pierced. Mm-hmm. And people in the malls and stuff would stop me all the time, especially African American women, saying how much they love my hair. Mm-hmm. So my hair became sort of this identity thing that I had to keep up.
It attracted people to you.
Yeah, I felt like people are like, "Oh, you're a pastor." It gave me something to say. Yeah, no, I am.
And this is kind of right before the cool church movement and the emergent church, where pastors were starting to step out and be. Right. Interesting.
Right. They're starting to wear some skinny jeans and put the little, tap sleeves on the, they have and piercings and I'm a cool pastor. Yeah, church is cool.
Right.
That kind of thing.
There's still billboards. I think the cool church is now called The Bridge.
It is called The Bridge.
And there's one that I see on the way to work every day that says boring church, not us.
Right.
And it's a picture of someone looking kind of bored. And I mean, you know what? There's many portals into the kingdom, and I think that probably that brand attracts a certain type of person that for that time in that place maybe needs to hear the gospel presented in a way that is new and fresh and not boring, right?
I have no idea. I've only been to the cool church once.
Oh, you did go?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
It was.
Yeah, it was what it was.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, what you preached about in 2000, in whatever that was, I think it's 2000.
Yeah.
In the front of El Camino, between the FAC and the D pod there, I'm 10 years old and I'm sitting there, and I don't really have an understanding of sexuality or intimacy or marriage.
Right.
And at this point in my life, I don't really have an understanding of any of those things either, but much less so then. And you said, Russ, Emily, in this journey of marriage, you must become naked with each other. Naked, emotionally, naked, physically. And my brother David and I are sitting there, he's 11 at the time, and we're like, man, that's just weird. This guy, this Eric guy, he's basically inviting them into this marriage wherein, David and I, for all intents and purposes, are sort of imagining, well, you guys kind of just have to get naked, and then you look at each other and you go, all right, well, we're naked. That's great. Thanks for that, and you put your clothes back on and go have dinner. So for years and years, we associated, well, anyway, that was the.
That's awesome.
That's that sort of. Anyway, I like this format. It's where radio's gone. Really, I mean, AM radio is such a dying breed, and even the Dan Le Batard show, which is the most popular creative property that ESPN has right now, is it's the podcast, and it's the simulcast on ESPNU, and it's the simulcast on the ESPN app that people are actually watching this thing.
They're watching him while he's doing the radio show that you could listen to on the radio.
Yeah.
Interesting.
They do a really well-produced, made-for-television. It's not made for television, but they, illustrate things enough to where you could watch it and be entertained. But when
the one where they have one camera and there's the three of them?
There's two of them in the room, sometimes three.
Does his dad show up?
Oh, no, you're thinking of Highly Questionable.
Okay.
That's an actual TV show.
Oh, okay.
And that's a half-hour thing.
Okay.
The radio show they've been doing for years, and I consume it when I do. I'm consuming it via podcast, and so anyway, so I watched Planet of the Apes last night. Rise of the Planet of the Apes. It came out in 2011.
So this is the first one. They're free, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you know a little bit about the fact that this resurfaced here.
People think it's really good.
Actually, it's really good. My little brother Steven's been like trying to get me to watch them for a couple months now.
Okay.
And it never appealed to me. Honestly, I have some concerns about like the over personification of animals that we do. Mm-hmm. There's a show on Netflix called BoJack Horseman. You heard of it?
Mm-mm.
I think it's with Keith Olbermann, actually, if you remember Keith Olbermann.
Oh, I remember this. Yes, he was, who was he partners with back in the day?
Dan Patrick.
Yeah, Dan Patrick. I used to listen to that. That was like my first like intro into sports radio.
They were really good.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's interesting, right? Because he's this wildly liberal guy who vacillated between MSNBC, then he went back to ESPN, then he left ESPN, then he went back to ESPN. But anyway, I think he also does voiceovers for BoJack Horseman, wherein he's voicing a donkey who plays, but he's like, married to a woman or dates women, goes to his job with other men. But at the end of the day, it's like he's a donkey. Apparently, it's very funny.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't find it to be. I found it to be like pretty crude. But something bothers me about this idea where we're pushing the limit of now, like, let's normalize animals as humans and let's put them in sexual situations with other humans. And we watch that and go, it's just like any other comedy. And I'm like, no, I think something more pernicious perhaps is happening here. Where, I'm not certain exactly what, but gives me
I just
pause.
have to pause the show here and just say that I think some bigger words are going to come out for people and our audience may not be capable of handling Kevin's vocabulary. So, pernicious, maybe you could tell us a little bit about what that word means.
I think pernicious implies the idea that it's subtle and it's intentional, but it's maybe not overt. And so if the writers and creators of this show are intending to move the dial towards a more broad acceptance of animals, maybe sexual acts with animals, whatever the darkness is, they're not going to do it in this overt way and say, hey guys, we think that we should normalize bestiality. They're going to perniciously, secretly, surreptitiously even, again, moving it back to covert and discreet, to where you don't really know what you're absorbing and consuming, and yet your viewpoints are being changed without your consent. And that's where I think that the enemy works a lot in our culture, and especially through media.
I would agree with you. So tell me about this movie, though.
Well, that's it. Kind of back in that vein. Like, we've got Planet of the Apes, which did you see the old one?
I actually saw the one. Well, yeah, I've seen the old ones, but I also saw one of the remakes with Wahlberg.
Like in the last 5 years?
Yeah, it was in about 10 years. Wahlberg did one.
Okay. I don't know.
It's not that good.
Mark Wahlberg's a terrible actor. He's way overrated. I just saw All the Money in the World, which was interesting, right? Because Kevin Spacey was, they shot the whole thing, and then all the allegations came out about him, and they said, we got to scrap him from the movie. And they replaced him with the 88-year-old Christopher Plummer, who played the Father Von Trapp in The Sound of Music in 1965. Okay,
wow.
53 years ago. So I'm sitting there in the audience, and I'm going, this can't be the same Christopher Plummer, because he would have to be almost 90, and he was incredible. As an 88-year-old, they shipped him in, and they refilmed the whole thing in about 2 months.
Wow.
Yeah. It was an okay movie, and overall, excuse me.
But he was good.
He was very good. And Wahlberg is in it as this security guard, and he's just kind of bad.
Yeah. I like Wahlberg.
He's a likable guy. He's cool. He's got swag. He's got a Boston-like thing.
And he's Catholic, and he kind of holds to his Catholic.
Does he?
Stuff.
Kind of holds to his guns on that?
Well, and he's gotten more conservative as he's gotten older. and has children. I think he has children now. I'm not completely sure, but yeah, his whole family is Catholic, and it's pretty.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean,
he talks about how he regrets making some of the movies he's made.
For their content or for his bad acting?
For the content early on.
He was in the Fighter. If you saw The Fighter with Christian Bale, it's a real Boston movie. You know, they're on this. You know, his brother Christian Bale is a prize fighter, basically. But I think Mark is a prize fighter. Anyway,
so let's get back to the Apes.
Planet of the Apes. Yeah. No, I don't really have too much to say about it. I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it. It did do this thing where we're giving apes language, actually, and I'm interested in whether I think that's a good thing or not, because you know, I've been thinking a lot about how, you know, Hebrews 1 talks about to which of the angels did he ever say, today you are my son, today I've become your father, and that's the Father speaking to the Son. Well, we also became sons and daughters of God, which the angels never experienced, and are perhaps, I don't know if jealous is the right word, but they look at us and they go, look, you are this animal with flesh and a spirit, you know, this amalgamation, this mixture of the two. And one thing that I think is a distinctive in our spiritual life is the use of language. Animals, to my knowledge, I haven't heard of, you know, what was it, Coco the monkey?
Yes.
He wasn't speaking full sentences.
No, I think he has a vocabulary of like, 300 words or something like that. So it's a pretty good...
He was signing, though.
He was signing, yes.
He wouldn't speak it with his mouth.
No, he couldn't speak. Yeah,
and
speech is a big part of being human. I think determining future is a big part of it. Like, animals don't think about their future. Like a silkworm just spins silk because that's what he does, or she does, or it does. But we think about future, create future, design future, because that's what God does. Like, we're imitating our image bearer.
Yeah, right. Like
you're within personally,
and that's the beauty of the dog, though, is they're in the present all the time. They're not thinking about 5 minutes from now.
Not at all. Yeah, there's something to learn from the dog, but yes.
That's really interesting. Well,
which is that's not my idea. I mean, that's Erwin McManus's idea, but
it's still a good one. So what we give to these animals in this movie is that idea to create future.
Yes, the capacity.
The capacity to create future, and then the capacity for language. And I think language is, you know, if from eternity the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit are coexisting peacefully, and the Word was made flesh, meaning Christ, prior to becoming flesh, was in some way representative of language and of word, then I think what we say and our ability to say it and understand it is deeply sacred, and it ties into, you know, the identity of the Godhead in a way we probably don't understand.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying, don't give animals the use of language, but I was like, okay, towards the end of the movie, they start talking. And now basically you could have, I guess, a traditional evolution and creation conversation. This movie's probably trying to show you, like, look, we're basically the same as these apes. All right. I wasn't as, you know, interested or bothered by that facet of it. It was well done. It had James Franco in it.
Yeah.
Another fallen to the accusations as of late.
Yes.
But it was a good movie. And there's 2 more that I have to watch, and I watched the next 2 tonight.
Nice. Well, that's awesome.
Yeah. So, anyway, well, this is Faith Over Breakfast.
It is Faith Over Breakfast. And man, Kevin, we may have to do this some more. You and I was thinking while you're talking that maybe we could do a monthly podcast aside from Faith Over Breakfast, just you and me, because you have lots of thoughts and ideas, but there's no way you can handle the anxieties of a regular weekly thing, I think, because I remember you in the radio show.
Yeah.
And when you stopped doing it, you became a different person.
Yeah.
Yeah. You were a lot more calm and a lot less anxious, and it seemed like that put so much pressure on you because you had to come up with something good every single day.
It did.
To talk for 1 hour, and you had to come up with guests, and you had to come up with all this other stuff. And now he's leaving.
Well,
he's gone, people.
The anxiety became unbearable. It was crushing.
Yes, it was.
No, I mean, that's...
So anyway, I love hanging out and talking to you. You have good things to say, good thoughts and stuff.
Yeah, I'm not sure how stable I actually am. My mind just kind of has all these things going on in it, and here's some of it. Here's 1/100th of what I thought about this morning.
Yes, that's true.
But yeah, that show, because I was working 30 hours a week in addition to managing this entire show, which is daily content, my days would start at 6:30 and then end, get home at 5:30, but I've had a couple hours of emails and writing to do. And I was so driven, and I realized what I was driven by, and that was the fear of failure, the fear of embarrassment, the knowledge that I'm going to be on the air tomorrow, and I don't want to screw up and not have good guests and not have good content, because I'll look bad.
Right.
So I worked hard to make sure that wasn't the case, and that actually my deepest fear in that whole thing was that we'd get to a day when a guest wouldn't show up, or I would forget how to speak, or I would lose all my content. Your dad, John Deepen, did a show at KVOI back in the 90s.
No, I remember even listening to him.
It was something to do with mental health.
Yeah, at the time he was running a mental health program. He had his own program, and so then the radio show was part of that program.
Yeah. I miss your dad.
I did too. But you could go visit him.
He's home. He's back home.
He's back.
Okay.
But he's just, feels swamped by life.
I understand.
They're in demand all the time. But if you actually drove by after work and just stopped by, they'd be like the most giddy people ever.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to do that.
Since he was right next to your work.
Yeah, he's right there. I can walk over. Well, he was telling me about, and he only did the show for like a year, and it was a weekly show back in the 80s, 90s. And this one time, his guest just doesn't show up. And so, but you got to go to airtime. So like if I would have called out sick this morning and you can just say, oh, I'm not going to do this.
Right.
You're on the radio, another constraint, and that is anxiety inducing, is the fact that 9:06 is going to roll around and we're going to roll live to you. And whatever you have to say,
right,
we're going to hear. So he didn't have a guest, and he was literally scrambling on air, grabbed his briefcase looking for articles. Hey, it's John Deepen here. And so he told me that like before I even had done the show, and I was like, this is going to happen to me weekly. I'm going to have constant, and nobody ever didn't show up for an interview.
I know, you guys really, you had the system going. I mean, you could have made a living someday doing it. You had your guest planner, you had your booker.
My mom was incredibly helpful. She, early on in the show, I realized, hey, can you start coordinating with people when and where to be and why they're coming. And so she generated so much interesting content for us. The tour to Tucson, we had Richard DiBernardis, who founded the thing, on, as well as Denise Mueller, who was the fastest woman in the world.
Yeah.
That was our second week, and it was like, this is cool. And she went out and used her journalistic skills, as she used to write for the Wildcat.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. My mom.
I do know your mom. I just didn't know she wrote for the Wildcat.
She has this ability to, I don't want to say mine information, because it's not for the purpose of just mining it, but she can get the facts on pretty much anything.
She's a journalist.
Yeah, she was by nature, and that's in her DNA. And so,
that's cool.
Anyway,
so there's a couple things you want to talk to me about.
Well,
like trauma and like dishwasher.
Those are less interesting to me than. I want to understand your opinion on EGs.
Oh yeah, well we can start with EGs.
You
know my opinion on EGs?
I don't. Well, I'm curious. It's come up a lot in my life recently. I've been eating it a lot more, drinking a lot more of the slushies. It was a big part of my childhood, and it's a big part of what it means to be a Tucsonan. I mean, we talk about it. People come to town if you tried the EGs, and talking last night with a fellow Tucsonan, it was like, most people that come are kind of disappointed. They might fake it, but because actually maybe it's not that special. Maybe it's just a slush. But it does find a unique niche between, I think, an Italian ice, which is really hard, okay, you got to dig into, and then a slushie from Circle K, which is actually runny. So it kind of meets in the middle there. And I think that pina colada is great flavor. You get some good flavors of the month.
Yeah, some weird ones like licorice and stuff like that.
They've never done licorice.
I think they have done licorice.
It would be such a failure.
I think now they have done licorice.
So I actually used to work with the gal whose dad started it. His name was Ed Irving.
Okay, so let's just pause there.
Yeah.
So we have Scott here. Mm-hmm. His uncle is the one who does he's the guy who does all the recipes for every.
Oh, really? And Scott. Scott.
Yeah, Scott.
His uncle still works for them?
I think they're part owners of EG's, or they are related to that guy that you're talking about.
Well, there's two founders, Ed Irving and his friend with a name starting with G said, okay, it's Ed and let's call him Gerald. Okay. And we'll be E and G, so EG's. Oh. Back in the 80s is when they said, okay, we're going to do this. They recently sold it in 2011. They sold it off to another family business who kind of, I think, took some of the marketing and did some new things with it. Well,
let's just be honest. You're right. I like the actual slushies. They're good, and I don't know.
You do like EG's.
I hate their food. I don't like their food at all.
I used to be on that opinion.
Well, partly because it's very expensive. You can go get a better sandwich somewhere else.
You could. There's Beyond Bread for like the same price. Yes. And you're talking about another Tucson.
Yeah. And there's a lot of sandwich places that popped up that are better.
Yeah, like
Melt's.
Yeah, Melt's okay.
It's better.
Jersey Mike's is probably better.
Okay. Yeah, so there are places like that. Even, to be honest, I'd rather go to Jimmy John's for a sandwich.
Yeah, my brother works at Jimmy John's.
Does he?
I thought my brother was dead last weekend.
Why?
Well, I freaked out a little bit, but I live with my little brother Steven, and I look after him, and I'm not his parent, but
How old is your little brother Steven?
He's 23.
So you look after him. He's 23. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anyway, continue.
I called him at 8:30, and he's at work, and I said, hey, we're all hanging out at home. Do you want to come over? And he says, actually, I'm working a little late tonight. Shop closes at 10, but I should be home by like 11:30. I said, okay, yeah, sounds good. See you then. So 11:30 rolls around, 12 rolls around, and I'm like, it's not like Steven. He's not like me where he could, meet someone at work and say, hey, well, let's go get a beer or whatever. Let's go hang out. He's not going to do that. He's just going to come straight home. And so 11:30, 12 rolls around, kind of like, Steven. So I start calling him on his cell phone, nothing. It's not going straight to voicemail, so it's not like it's dead. It's just ringing 4 times and then going to voicemail. I call a different I call his Jimmy John's. They say it rings off the hook. Call a different Jimmy John's. And they said, yeah, he should be done by now. I'd be concerned if I were you, like if he doesn't get home pretty soon, because the closing duties don't really take up more than, the time that we're at right now. So kept waiting, kept calling him. 12:30 now, rolling around.
Oh my gosh.
1 o'clock. I'm sitting there and I'm going, okay, I work in hospice care, so I see death all the time. I know the reality of it. Not usually sudden, tragic deaths.
Yes, they're not in hospice, right?
He wouldn't have gone to hospice. But, I'm thinking, okay, this is it, Lord. I guess this is what the next chapter is. And so I called the police because I thought if they could maybe tell me, like, hey, you got an accident, and they couldn't give me that information, but they requested or they suggested that I call the hospitals. I started calling the hospitals. These miserable calls to TMC, talking to the main hospital. Hey, do you have this guy? Spell it again? No. Let me get you to the emergency room though, because he could have just come in. And so I'm thinking, yeah, okay. So I get to the ER. No. Called them, Banner, St. Joe's, nothing. So I'm thinking, okay, probably he's not at the hospital, but he could have just gotten to the hospital and they couldn't have checked him in. So I get in the car at 1:15 and just start driving to his work.
Wow.
Driving across town. Of course, I run out of gas at the Costco parking lot. It's done. Now I'm stranded at Costco at 1:30. And I don't know where my brother is. And I have no gas, and it's cold. It's Saturday at 2 in the morning. This is a day in life.
Oh my gosh, Kevin, this is crazy. Okay, so you're sitting in the parking lot.
Yeah.
Freezing your butt off.
Yeah.
Who are you going to call at 2 in the morning?
I call a couple of my brothers, and...
did they answer the phone?
They did.
Okay.
They are not as concerned as I am. And also kind of saying, well, what can you do? And I'm saying, I'm doing what I can do. I mean, I don't know what else
Now I'm walking.
to do. Yeah. So I started walking. I have a gas tank in my car. Started walking to Circle K.
So, do you run out of gas a lot?
Yeah, probably about once every 6 weeks, 8 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you have is something broken, like your odometer broken, gas?
Right, that's what the Uber. So I got an Uber. That's what he asked me. And really the answer is twofold. One, I'm an idiot. And two, I switched cars a year and a half ago. In my old car, actually I drove Toyota Camrys, and their gas light is notorious for, at least in the ones that I had, the gas light comes on, you've got 40, 60, 70 miles.
Okay.
Very generous on that. And if you've seen the Seinfeld where Kramer is test driving the car and he's, it's on empty, it's below empty, the meter's breaking off, and he wants to just go and test it and see how far he can go, and he gets the guy all interested. Yeah, that's kind of my mentality when I'm on the road. Let's see how far we can go without getting gas.
Okay.
Again, that's not really logical.
Or wise or anything like
or learning from, probably in the last year, I've run out of gas 8, 9, 10 times.
It's good exercise.
Yeah, so I've got a can. Actually, I've still got some gas in that can in my car, and I was smelling it this morning. It's like, it's residual fumes.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm going to. Anyway, my new car, obviously, the gas light comes on. I'm like, oh, I'm good. And I think I only have like 20 or 30 miles. And then that horrible feeling when you're out of gas and you're on the roadway.
Yeah, not good.
I used to drive for Uber and Lyft. And if you can believe it, I'm on a Lyft ride one time and went out of gas. The worst thing you could do with a pan. I just got this guy in the car. I'm like, hey, well, dude, I guess the ride's over, man, because I don't have any more gas. The car won't go. And he's like, we're pretty close to where you need to go. So he's like, no worries, man. I'll just walk. I'm like, yeah, I've utterly failed you as the Uber driver right now. Just running out of gas on the way there. I don't know if you've ever ridden Uber, but that would be
bad.
That would be a failure. Yeah.
And did he give you like 5 stars?
Yeah, 5 stars. Yeah.
Nice.
Well, he thought it was kind of innovative the way that I didn't actually take him to where he was supposed to go. He appreciated the creativity, I think. Anyway, so
you're walking, and anyway, I'm assuming you get gas, and
yeah, I get an Uber to the gas station, gas up, and figure, okay, I guess I'm just going to go home now, and hope he's home, and start praying, and immediately, kind of what goes on in my mind is I go to God, and I'm like, okay, like, I question his goodness. Like, you're not good. All right. Like, that's my first thought. Like, how can you justify this? And I think the pain for me would have been so much less than it would be for my family. That was the thing I was dreading. It's like having to deal with their grief.
Yeah.
Because I made peace with it. We had a dog that died last October, and she was everything to me. And I knew she was going to die. She was a dog. It was obvious. She was eaten by something at a young age. But when I was with her, I appreciated every single moment. And I said, I'm never going to withhold an ounce of affection from you. And so the last time I was with her, she just wanted to cuddle. And, I was sitting there eating peaches. She wanted some. She starts eating them out of my mouth, things she would do. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Like, please, like, let me drink of your love for every second I possibly can. And so I did. And then she passed, and I was okay because I was able to embrace every moment that I had with her. And I think that's what we should do with each other.
Yeah.
And that's what I did with Steven. The last, 2 nights before he had this supposed accident, we were playing games, and I just, he's not a very physically affectionate guy, and I am, and I just like to show him. And so I was just hugging him and kissing him during this game, and he's punching me away, and I just, just telling him how I'm crazy about him. And, it's kind of hyperbolic, but it's true. It's representative of this strong love that I have for him. So I was like, all right, God, this doesn't make any sense. Probably maybe getting ahead of myself a little bit.
Yeah, this is a long story. So
right.
we're getting there. So you've managed to, you're having this conversation with God about his goodness, and you've
right.
loved him. You've loved well, and you're headed home.
Right. I realized that it's easy to talk about God's goodness when you have, I haven't really had tragedy.
Right. Right. It is easy to talk about when there's no tragedy.
I'd say, no, at this point in my life, I still do believe in a good God. Mm-hmm. Against, things that I've seen, my faith pushes me towards a belief in a good God. But I haven't been faced with some of the adversity that people have. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it's less easy for them it's more easy for me to say, hey, like based on my experience, overall God is good and he pushes people towards good things. So to have something really traumatic happen would draw that into question.
Yeah.
You know? And so I get home, he's not there.
Wow.
And it's like
I'm expecting him to be there.
Yeah, you're thinking he's there like by now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I start really just preparing for this reality that, you know, that would be horrible. And so the last thing I think of is, you know, friending his friends on Facebook and, you know, writing them and saying, hey, you know where Stephen is. So I friend a couple of his friends. They friend me back. I write them messages.
So wait a minute. So you friend a couple of his friends on a Saturday night at 2 a.m, and they friend you back. So we know 23-year-olds on a Saturday night are not going to bed at 2.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So fortunately, they were with him. He gives me a call. He tells me how I need counseling immediately. I'm a crazy person for worrying. You know, you're out of your mind, basically. And I was just happy that he was okay. He had basically, when we talked at 8:30, normally if he was going somewhere, he'd say, oh yeah, I can't come home. I'm going to Daniel's. I'm going to Joe's house. He didn't know that he was going to go. It was up in the air, / he didn't think he would go. In that time between 8:30 and when he left work, turns out he was going to go. He didn't tell me. And then he leaves his phone in the car. So it's kind of a perfect storm for that whole thing to happen.
I'm sure somewhere deep in his soul he felt loved and cared about.
I think so. Yeah, you have to, with Stephen, you have to like punch him in the face with love repeatedly, and then eventually he says, oh yeah, now I feel it.
Yeah. Well, that's quite a story, Kevin. That's crazy.
That was a rabbit trail from
off of Eatery's. Which, by the way, Eatery's, like, I really do like Eatery's, but I will not eat there. My family loves Eatery's.
They get the food there?
They get the grinders. They like the French fries.
Good fries.
Come on. They like the ranch.
The fries with ranch?
Yeah, they love those. They like the grinders. I like my Tylenol, my jacket there. Yeah.
Extra strength.
Yeah.
Eric Siepen, pastor of the Village Church, has 46 cents.
That's right, since you're wearing my jacket and a Tylenol.
Some acetaminophen.
And then a church deposit slip, which I don't save, I just throw away.
Well, that's a nice deposit.
Yeah.
Maybe that's, more information. I won't share that with our listening audience. Well, good. I'm glad you like Eatery's.
I just the Eatery's.
Yeah, hey, so you put me onto this... go ahead. Do you have something to
No, I know what I put you onto. I put you onto Consport Day.
Yeah, but wait, what time is it? How long have we been talking?
We've been talking about 40 minutes. But the show goes about an hour, so we got 20 minutes.
Oh, wow. Well, listen, so...
You're having way too much fun, Kevin. I can see you just like... You haven't had time to just talk.
Yeah.
Tell the world about yourself. But let's just talk about Consport Day really fast and say that it's this great...
well, you can't talk about Consport Day really fast. Like, that's another 40-minute show in and of itself.
All right, we'll talk about it later.
I would love to.
Okay.
It is. You put me onto it. I have some mixed reviews.
Yeah.
It's a medicinal supplement.
Yeah. How many of you do you take when you try to sleep?
Well, I took 4, and I took 3, 5, 4, 3. I took 3 last night.
Uh-huh.
And it didn't really put me to sleep faster, but it kept me asleep, I think. It helped me sleep better.
That's more what it does.
Yeah.
It kind of levels out your sleep a little bit.
Yeah, because, have you ever had sleep paralysis?
What is that?
So that's when it's a really crazy phenomenon where either right before you go to sleep or as you're waking up from sleep or in the middle of sleep, you have a sensation that you can't move.
No, never
happened. You can't talk.
Haven't had that.
And it lasts, for several minutes.
Oh, wow.
And for me, for some people, it's accompanied by like doom and really dark things. Mm-hmm. For me, it's always a lucid state of like, am I looking in my room or am I dreaming about my room? But in any case, you're prostrate on your bed and you cannot move. And it goes on for minutes and try as you may, you're stuck. It kind of goes in with the shadow people. You heard of the shadow people phenomenon?
Mm-mm.
It's where people think that they're seeing spirits or demons or, they're either hallucinating something, but they think that they're really seeing figures
in their rooms.
Yes, right, yes. Right.
I've heard of this. I didn't know they were called the shadow people.
That's kind of what they've, coined it. Which it could be a demonic thing, or it could be some psychological phenomenon.
Right. Well, I mean, I certainly, have this interesting experience with my sleep in that anytime that I shake somebody's hand who's new to our community or whatever like that, if there is something spiritual going on with them, then it will come out in my dream. And I'll have a very dark dream where I end up interacting with demonic things.
Wow.
And I have actually had people who I don't know, who certainly have spiritual things on them, come up to me at random and want to shake my hand, want to touch me. And that night,
So what's going on there?
Well, I mean, I think that for me in particular, and this is just, what I believe, I don't know if it's true, is that for me, in my sleep, the veil is thinner in the spiritual world. And as a pastor, it helps me know a little bit of who's stepping into my community and what's happening.
Sort of a protective measure.
Yes, it gives me a sense of where I need to move to help that person or protect my community from them or whatever else.
Do you have dreams a lot?
I do dream, but not ones that I remember a lot. I mean, I'll remember when I wake up, but I quickly forget them unless I tell Sue or something like that.
Okay.
But I do remember the more spiritual ones because I wake up. Or my wife wakes me up because I'm...
And these are spiritually unpleasant dreams.
Oh, they're very unpleasant. I mean, they're usually... and sometimes they're, depending on where that person is, they can be of sexual nature because, stuff that I've talked about on the podcast and in sermons, like the enemy pushes in on those things. So it's sexual things that are just like way out of character for my normal life will pop in, and they'll feel very dark, and they'll be connected to dark things. So yeah, no, I haven't had one in a while. Like it's been a while. I've shaken a lot of hands, so
Well, either you're becoming less sensitive, or there's people in the community that you're bringing in that are safer.
Yeah, I wonder if I've become less sensitive. I don't know. One of the things I did last year and the year before is I used to go drive up the mountain to, Baba Doag?
Yeah, Baba Doag.
So I'm not a very spiritually sensitive person, but Rod, the other pastor at the village, is. And he says that on that spot there, and I've done some research, there sits a very huge, evil, demonic force that this is his region. Yeah. He looks out over it, and it's where a lot of sacrifices happen in that spot.
Sacrifices of animals?
Yeah, and things like that. And then so all the other spiritual things in Tucson are under that being's rule. And so I used to go up there once a week, and I would set up a little Playmobil people as symbols of praying over the city, and then I would pray for the churches, and I would pray for the village and for Tucson, and then I would tell that force to leave, and that the light of God was going to take over Tucson. And in those 2 years, I had more spiritual experiences. I haven't been up there in probably 6 months to do that, so who knows if my Playmobil symbols are still standing up there.
I went to Baba Doag once to try to seek God's counsel on a decision, and heard nothing. And maybe it had something to do with the spot, but there was this job that I wanted to take, and I knew I shouldn't probably take it, but I was like, well, just give me confirmation. And so I went up with this confirmation bias and went to Baba Doag and walked around, and was like, I think I'm going to take this job, but it didn't reach any more clarity. Like there was no point in me going up there other than to say in my own mind that I had done that, And the other times I've been there was in high school with, I wasn't a drug user in high school, not a partier, and so would go there with friends just to hang out, and there was always people, darkness around me.
Yes. It's a very dark place. And you seem from the 2 years that I've known you to be very sensitive to darkness, and at times.
Yeah.
That's part of who you are.
I've had a lot of weird dreams in the last week myself. One of them is it's a little bit morbid, but I think it's appropriate for the listening audience. You can edit it out.
We can always cut her.
I think it is. I'm dreaming. I'm going east. I'm going west on 22nd Street in the dream. I think my little brother's in the back seat, and I take a right on Country Club to head north. And on Country Club, on the right side, so on the east side of Country Club, just north of 22nd, is this massive, like 5-story red brick house, which houses all the firefighters in our community. So like hundreds of men live in this one spot, and they're all, as you've seen firefighters, handsome, well-built, in uniform. So in the dream, they were wearing either short or long sleeve navy shirts with navy blue pants.
They're typical Tucson uniform.
Right, pretty typical TFT. And as I turn up, I realize actually there's been a major terrorist attack against this firehouse, and it's going on right now. And strewn across the street are dozens of dead firemen.
Oh my goodness.
And it's grotesque, and it's really, to behold all the damage, and some of these, men have been, decapitated, and there's body parts, and it's just a war scene. Someone bombed the heck out of this firehouse, and now pretty much every fireman in Tucson is dead. And so I'm trying to do this U-turn, and I'm driving over these bodies as I try to get out
of
really
Dodge. Yeah, so anyway. You're trying to turn around and get out of it.
Yeah, and it's so viscerally disturbing what's going on, and a lot of other weird, coincidences in the dream. Like my old high school drama coach is trying to cast a play that same day in that same space, but one thing that occurred to me in the dream that maybe is a takeaway is I realized, I said, okay, these terrorists, whoever's doing this, is actually really smart because they are killing the first responders.
Right.
And thus incapacitating our ability as a community to respond to any other calamities.
Right.
And that's wicked, it's devious, and it's brilliant, and it's disturbing. And so I woke up, and I'm thinking, okay, what is going on here with, killing the first responders? And I think in the kingdom of heaven, you're a first responder, right? I'd like to think of myself as someone who's supposed to be a first responder to the spiritually sick, the needy. And wouldn't the enemy's tactics be that of, hey, if I can kill these first responders, if I can get to them, who's going to respond to the people?
Right.
And so he doesn't have to attack the masses. He just needs to get to the first responders.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So.
Well, that's an interesting takeaway. I'll have to spend some time thinking about that.
Think about that. That's the only positive that I can think about coming from that dream.
Yeah, that seems like a dark dream.
It was.
Yeah. So next week, Andy's going to be with us.
Oh, Andy's coming back next week. Welcome back, Andy.
He'll be here.
Yeah, we should do this. What do you want to call it if we do it every month?
Well, that would be interesting.
Spin off to this. Well, so tell me, this is your off day. Thanks for coming in on your off day.
Yeah.
This has been fun. Is this work? Because I know Andy said that for him this was work.
He said it was work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he and I are going to have to work out our issues with that.
Well, but I want to know, for your own rest, you've been doing all these things to rearrange your schedule to be more centered and have more.
Yeah. No, I enjoy it a lot, but I enjoy most of the things in my job.
Right.
So it is work, yes.
Is this higher or lower anxiety than when you and I meet and you counsel me?
It's the same.
It's the same.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
This is high anxiety for you.
Oh, no, you're not high anxiety at all. I don't find you to be high.
No, good.
No, I actually enjoy being around you, Kevin. I feel like you have a lot of insight, and you're thinking a lot about what God is doing in your life. Sometimes I think, why is he making those choices? But
right. Let's go there.
But I know. I actually really, I wouldn't mind having you ask me a few questions really quick, because we still have about 6 minutes on the trauma thing, because I'd like to talk about it.
Let's do that. Let's cut into that.
I'm curious of what you want to know.
Yeah. So, thanks for having me on. Thanks for letting me blab for 52 minutes so far.
Yeah, it's been great.
Kind.
It's a little shorter because we had that whole conversation in the beginning, so we still got some time.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, we were just chatting about
right,
recording.
And that's not going to go on the podcast.
That's not going on the podcast.
And our prayer too is
probably not going to go on the podcast.
Yeah. Well, so I did this group called Mending the Soul that help me out. Who wrote?
Steve Tracy wrote it.
Steve and Celestia Tracy. Yeah, you go way back with them. Wrote this 12, 13-week course that's kind of intended to be a group therapy looking at trauma that people have experienced: physical, sexual, emotional, psychological, family trauma, and just looking at the consequences of that 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years later. And one of the themes in that was really new to me was this idea that our bodies, so you look at different addictions. One of mine in the past has been smoking cigarettes, which is just this awful thing that I know is, suicidal.
Right.
And the leader, the counselor of that group said, well, we soothe our traumas with our bodies. We use our bodies, the same mechanisms like if you were physically abused or sexually abused. Well, this body that I have was meant for someone else's gratuity. I'm just going to use it for my own. But throughout the course of the 13-week study, there was this integration more than I had seen of the body as an equal member of the mind, body, spirit. My friend Derek and I were talking last night, and he was mentioning a liturgist podcast, which he said spent the entire thing talking about how we store trauma in our bodies.
Yes. There's a famous book called The Body Keeps the Score.
The Body Keeps the Score. Okay, so we as westernized Christians, I think that trauma is localized in our mind and in our spirit, and don't appreciate the fact that our bodies store these traumas. And you talked 6, 8, 10 weeks ago a little bit about how you think the Buddhists are onto some stuff, and I don't know if you were talking specifically about this area.
Sure.
But I know one of the things at the Village that I hear, Catherine did a good job of in one of the what do we do when we ask people things? Hot seat. Well, what's that model? The hot seat model. It's the
table of decision.
Yeah. She was asking someone, we were teaching the model to some new people, and she said, "What are you experiencing in your body right now? And what were you experiencing that?" And that's a question that comes up in the Village, and I still don't quite understand it, but it's there and it's interesting. And so, tell me about this journey for you a little bit.
Well, first I'll argue a little bit against the fact that it's Christian, a Christian issue. In fact, historically, Christians do believe that your body actually keeps the score and have been more holistic. It's actually Western medicine,
Sure.
that has refused to accept that trauma is a big part of things. But what we found is, or we, as I say as an expert on all this, is that, for instance, if you've had childhood trauma, like sexual abuse, you are 50% more likely to have cancer and develop some kind of chronic disease chronic asthma, fibromyalgia, any of those kinds of disorders. Because your body doesn't know what to do with this. Yeah. And what they are learning is that your childhood really determines your adult health. In particular, in places where you felt powerless within your family context or as a child in some context. So there's a guy named Gabor Mate. I think I'm not going to say his name right, but it's Gabormate, but the E has an accent over it, so I don't know. He's a Canadian doctor.
Gabor Mate.
Mate, yeah. He's very famous, and you should read his books. And he's coming out with a book that I'm really looking forward to called Toxic Culture, which he's a medical doctor and a trauma doctor. He does a lot of addiction stuff. But he is looking at how our culture, Western culture, is abusive and how it's creating the trauma in our bodies. It's traumatic to be.
So what's trauma?
So when we're talking about trauma, we're talking about a lot of times from the least kind of trauma is your value. So American culture says that you are functional. So medicine looks at you as we got to get you functional, right? Or monetarily so useful. You have their value statements, but you're not valuable in American culture. Did I just kill that? Pause. Oh, we're still going. Yeah, you're not valuable for just who you are in culture. You have to have some kind of function. So anyway, that's like the least kind of trauma. So we're talking about physical abuse, sexual abuse, to emotional abuse, like growing up in a family where everyone's always angry. It produces really high anxiety.
So trauma is any event that impinges on our well-being in our space and has a lasting impact.
Yeah, and it tends to be either if it tends to be violent, or it tends to be, if not like, some sexual abuse, especially because it starts young, it's not violent, but it's insidious and manipulative, and so it's confusing, and right, and so those kinds of traumas are what have an impact on our body. So anyway, what this doctor talks a lot about is that when we sit down with people, medical doctors don't begin to interview people. Like say you come down with cancer, they don't interview you about your childhood, because part of your healing that's going to speed up your healing in cancer is dealing with your childhood trauma while you're getting chemo, because some of this is, it's impacting that, and so you can kind of change.
We have such a resistance to that in Western medicine.
Yes.
I come from a family of Western doctors who, shrug off DOs who are doctors of osteopathy, which is even this slight divergence from an MD, and saying like, we're going to try to look at a more holistic approach to your body,
right,
and try to solve underlying conditions instead of treat symptoms, and make you functional.
Right.
Why not make you resilient?
Right. Yes, resiliency and functionality. Those are
Well, yeah. That's obviously a whole other podcast in and of itself. But I recently started getting some massage, and my HSA will pay for it, and it's like this kind of new thing that I'm exploring a little bit. My friend runs a massage parlor, a well-known one here in town, and she has 3 masseuses who do massage trauma therapy.
Yes.
They bring people in, and they are integrating in the plan of care. Like, you've had past traumas, and these people will weep during their massages as they trigger points that perhaps were physically abused are worked. And there's like, the body keeps score is so interesting to me, because apparently we take an experience and we store it in our muscle memory, and it's there until either it's unlocked or it's worked on. But it affects our posture, it affects our chronic pain, it affects the way we go through the world. And I mean, I think when you talk about anxiety, you've kind of talked to me about, well, what is your body feeling? And you want to have an out-of-body experience, and that's absolutely true.
Right.
I want to be away from this physical flesh,
right,
and I want to be disassociated.
Right. So like, to go to real quick to that, like, so we have the fight or flight thing,
right,
and that's where anxiety and fear comes from. So that produces for kids all the time as they're little and stuff like that, and parents help them resolve all that. But what happens is in trauma is you have the fight and flight, but when you're being abused, you don't fight and you don't run away, and so you end up storing all that in you. And so now that becomes a trigger for you. Anytime that the fear and anxiety, like that normal natural chemical flood happens that's supposed to get you to fight or to run away, happens, and you've never had any resolution of fighting or running away, then that's where anxiety comes from. That's where, all of these disorders we're facing. And that's where addictions come from and all that kind of thing. It's because addiction, like alcohol, drugs, those kinds of things, calm those things down or help you distract from them. Right. Eating does that, like, compulsive eating, those kinds of things.
Just real quick, reading this book, Grace and Addiction, started reading it last night, and he says, well, amongst other things, addictions are a longing for love, and I'm not doing a good job here. Addiction is something that we can simply take care of by applying the proper remedy. It's not something we can take care of. You know what? I'm going to close the book because there's all kinds of things that aren't really there.
Well, maybe next time. Maybe we can talk about it more.
I have a final question for you.
Yes.
So you said months ago in a sermon that if you weren't a pastor, you would have been.
And I said on the last show.
Well, you said a sociologist in that sermon, a social scientist, and I thought, man, that's really true and interesting. And then last show you said
I changed it.
You changed it. If you weren't a pastor, you'd be a talk show host now.
Yeah. Well, and when I was reflecting on my childhood, I really began to think about how much that actually resonated with me. Because usually when I think back about what I really wanted to do, I end up in college, and I really wanted to be a sociologist in college. But when I go back to just being a 13-year-old listening to Rush Limbaugh when he had 50 stations and he was doing, this Star Wars thing and talking about, the mole or the whatever birthmark on Gorbachev's head was growing to the shape of the United States, and he'd play this Death March in Star Wars or whatever it was, and he did good radio.
Yeah.
Even if you don't agree with him, he was innovative, he was different, and I was like, that's what I want to do.
But I think it can be both at different times, different. You wanted to be different.
Yeah. So I think that, my adult self would really like to have been a sociologist.
I have to tell you this really quick thing. I got to go to work, but I was quick.
And we got to end this thing.
Yeah, it's.
People are going to get really bored and just.
Okay. I think we have these things, at least I've experienced, that are we would call unintended puns, where we do it. Language is so fluid, and so 2 days ago, I go to my friend Jill's office. I work in a business complex. She's near me. Someone brought me a hot dog back for lunch. It was great. We didn't have any ketchup. I searched all over the kitchen, all over through the cupboards, no ketchup. So I go over there. I know they have a kitchen. I say, hey Jill, how you doing? And Jill's a good friend of mine. She. We've spent time, if I catch her in the walkway, we'll talk. I'll go visit her in her office. We'll chat for 15, 20 minutes. She's come to the village a couple times. I've been to her church. Yeah, Jill. And so I think we value each other as friends. And I haven't really connected with her since the holidays, really, since she came to church on Christmas Eve. And so I go over there and I'm like, hey, Jill, long time no see. Hey, actually, I'm wondering if you have any ketchup. And so she's like, okay, yeah, I just came over here for ketchup, whatever. Goes, scrounges up and gets some ketchup. It's like dark blood red now, like it's been expired, but I'm desperate for some ketchup.
Right, and you're that kind of guy.
Yeah, I don't really care. And so I'm kind of guilty in how I just get the ketchup and I'm running. And so I say to her as I walk to the door and I turn around and I'm like, well, hey, I'd love to catch up sometime. And she's like, what did you just say? And I'm like, I would love to catch up sometime. And she's like, oh, like ketchup, haha. And I didn't intend that. I mean, it's this major pun,
that was really good.
But not intentional at all, at least I think. But I think we had just said ketchup so many times that there's this word bank that our minds use, and you draw on that recent memory, and then you say, oh, yeah, let's catch up. A couple months ago, I'm playing golf. I found out this guy that I'm playing golf with, his name's Ryan. He works in the screw business. He sells screws for playground equipment or something. And I say to him, I'm like, oh, sounds riveting. And what I was trying to say was, oh, it sounds like you have a really boring job. Like, ooh, that's riveting. And the whole group of guys were left there like, oh, yeah, nice one. Very good. Actually, really quick. Because I was like, oh, it sounds riveting. And I didn't admit that it was a mistake. I was like, yeah, that's my quick wit right there. But what is that? Why did I say, where did I get in my mind? I don't even know that I have control over the puns in those cases.
And maybe you've reached a level where you can do so my daughter is an amazing pun person. And she loves doing puns, and she's so quick at them. And so we have a rating system for her.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
1 to 10.
No. We say, well, that's that's a swap meet pun. But that's lame. You get that at swap meet. Oh man, you bought that at the mall, didn't you? That's like a mall. So we have these your shopping centers as to where she's at. She hates it, but we give her a hard time.
Wow.
But those you've elevated yourself to the place where your puns you don't even know you're making puns anymore.
I do search for puns, but it was just interesting to have, the other day I'm like, I don't even know what I'm saying. Am I intending to say these things or just coming out?
Yeah. I think we just have to end with you're brilliant.
No. I am, insane. So let's just leave it at that.
Yeah. We'll leave it at that. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks.